Hey folks, ET here coming at you with the week ahead, and today we're going to cover three random tickers. That will be AMD, ZOM, and Microsoft, which is kind of three different sectors. So we'll see how that goes. ZOM is definitely outside of those sectors. So we'll go ahead and jump right in with AMD and get going. See what its deltas look like. See what its flow looks like. Obviously, well, there's some heavy flow still there. Now that we're just looking for 120 a little further out in the year, but we are obviously above that in price right now, or we were above that in price, now we're not. Its net flow looking a little interesting, kind of mixed there. Let's go out to its 5-day. Its 5-day is pretty put heavy, but it's starting to climb up a little bit there. So we'll see how its net flow pans out over the next few days. As far as its deltas go, they are bullish, and it has a pretty decent win percentage, so it's still showing some bull, although it has shrunk a little bit. So that's kind of interesting to see. It got beat down at the end of the week after chips ran. Something inside of me says some money might move away from chips and go into other sectors, but I think there is some gamma still above on AMD, and so we'll have to see how that plays out. Going into its price distro for the rest of the week, Monday, kind of an even mix. We're seeing a lot of this on a lot of tickers that I've just looked at. Tuesday is the same, a bit more even, a lot of chop, maybe round trip days. And then Wednesday, still slightly bearish, but still doesn't look that heavy into it. Wednesday is the same. Thursday is getting slightly more bullish, but still some decent sized bear bars. Just a lot of mixed signals here. Maybe it's a chop week for it. And then Friday, obviously its price distribution is the same as every other day. Going into its this week expiry, it's just ever so slightly bull or bear right here. So we'll see how that goes. And then going into next week's, it's quite bullish. Remember, these do change throughout the day, so we will need to take a look at them and make sure that they haven't changed as of late as we go along. Let's go ahead and grab our expiry for this week and see where we're at. As you can see, there are a lot of repels on the way up, and its biggest pull is either 100 or 125. They both have about the same sized bar there, pretty close, 39.15 and 39.16. So this 100 is actually slightly lower. Sorry, 100, not 110. All right, and then there's a lot of positive levels. There are a lot of positive levels that could repel. Now, remember, if price gets over these levels, this 121, this 122, this 123, it could repel upwards before it hits the next one. But if we looked at that price distribution just a second ago, we did see that it looks like there could be a little bit of chop. So it could consolidate for a bit before it moves up. And it's interesting to see how big of a gap there is between 125 and 110. So what that leads me to believe, we do have some gamma all the way up at 138, which we can see on the chart, which we'll pull up here in a few. But obviously that's a pretty interesting range if it decides to hit both of its largest negative gamma levels. Going into price distro, it's supported more around this 113, 114 range, and still not completely unsupported here up into the 125, but it's arced up just a little bit. So that's interesting to see for that. All right, now let's take a look at its levels. It had a rough week after mooning early in the week, and then it kind of just had a slow drawdown the rest of the week. Right now we close right just below this gamma level here at 118, and there are some just okayish sized ghost zones going down, unlike some other tickers which has a lot of support going down, or at least a lot of positive levels for some possible repels. It definitely has some larger ghost zones to the downside. So there's that 110, interesting. So if somehow it manages to have a bad early week, I would be pretty interested to see if it could actually pull back to that 110, and then perhaps maybe the rest of the week it goes up a little bit based on some of those price distros. Looking at its upside here, well, it's just a bit muddy on its way up. There's not as much free roam. 117 to or 118 to 119 is not very big. 119 to 120 obviously isn't very big. Its current largest around where we're trading at, ghost zone, is 121 to 123, and then another $2 range there. Kind of crazy. As you can see, it's kind of muddy on the way up. So if it is going to grind up, it's going to have to grind up and make it through all of these levels. That could be a repel. So that's AMD for you. It's interesting to see. I might actually, even though the deltas say up, if it gets a little bit of a pop and I see some negative flow towards it, I might actually take this to the short side, not obviously in a weekly, but maybe in hopes that this 110 could be touched. If we have a bunch of positive flow, obviously then I'll change my mind, but if chips are having a bad week overall, then that is kind of where I will look. Thank you for the Control Z, everybody that taught me that. I grabbed a level instead, messed it up, and now I know from a bunch of you who messaged me how to do it right. So there is AMD for us. We're going to go ahead and grab Microsoft real quick, but we're going to do ZOM next. I just want to have this chart up ready to go because I already have ZOMs pulled up. Let's take a look at ZOM's deltas and see where we're at here. Whoops, grabbed the wrong one. Here we are. So ZOM's interesting. Oil has been beat up. There's not a lot of heavy flow going in towards it right now. It's pretty light, and it's been a sector that has been really beat down and hasn't been doing that well. And if we take a look at its 5-day, you can see why. Its net flow has been just a push down as we go. A lot more puts were bought on Friday than before, so that's interesting to see. So maybe it's going to experience some more downside. I am not sure. Going into its deltas, let's take a look. ZOM is an inverse, so ZOM is an actual buy when the bars are above. So that does prove a little promising. It's against what we've seen on the net flow, but that can change as we go along. If it catches some bids, the net flow obviously will pick up there. All right, so checking this, it is a little bullish on our dealer Greeks build up side, which is interesting to see. All right, let's take a look at our price distribution here. This is an interesting one for tomorrow. Some big green bars, some big red bars, more of a chop week is what I'm starting to see on some of these things. Going into Tuesday, another thing of mixed bags. Remember, these do change every day. So if you're looking at them, they might change and they might fluctuate, and you might see something different. Wednesday is the same. Looks a little bit more bullish, just slightly, but not necessarily. Then going into Friday or Thursday, it's looking slightly more bullish, and then Friday, bearish again. So remember to check these. So when you're checking these, I want to point one important thing out. If the market is closed, when it says 1 day, that is the next day. Once the market is open, okay, once the market is open, if it says 1 day, then that is also the next day, not the current day, if that makes sense. All right, so let's take a look at the dealer OI here. They are showing somewhat bear across the board, going all the way down, so that's a little interesting to see. So that's a little bit of a non-confluence factor as we look at net flow on its long term. It's not super positive. Its price distribution is kind of a mixed bag, but its deltas are staying up, but also it shows some dealer OI that could be bearish. This once again does change throughout the day, as I said, so check that as well. All right, let's pull up its expiry for this week and see where we're going. Now that's interesting to see. Biggest level is 107. I do not think it closed there yet, so that is pretty interesting to see. We've got a lot of pulls here, and then I guess its next biggest, that's at 475, and so its next biggest level will be 108, and then 110 is where a lot of people bought calls to that I know, and that would be its first positive level that could be a reject. So that's interesting. 107 is its current biggest pull, which is good to see if you are long on oil right now. The deltas do line up, but not every factor is perfect. So if I were playing this and I were already in calls, I would start to trim along these levels if they hit throughout the week, and then 110, if this didn't change any, I would think about getting completely out. Taking a look at its GEX and VEX profile, its price is weirdly not supported very much at all, except for just a tiny bit down here at 98.5, which is pretty close to where I think we got last week. We got pretty low, about 100 before it went, and then it's obviously less supported as it gets up, which does line up with the gamma along these levels right here. All right, now let's take a look at its levels. It had a pretty decent day on Friday. Okay, we got down to that. We got all the way down here into this 100 range early in the week, right on Thursday, and then it just kind of started to move upwards and pull towards all of this, and it did manage to get over the 105 and do some rejecting and some bouncing, but it finally got above. Now it's resting nicely in this area. It does, for what it's worth, have a pretty sizable ghost zone if it breaks 107 to 110, which sort of gives another little bit of an example as to why 110 would be a good spot if that sector is doing well. Energy's been so beat up, and so have banks, and it will be interesting to see if energy and banks start to catch a bid, and maybe tech loses a little bit of it, and we see a little bit of that sector rotation. Chips and Apple and Amazon and Google have all been on a pretty nice tear. Not saying they're going to go to the gutter, but they might need a resting period or some consolidation, and we might see some other sectors pop up, which is why we're covering 3 different sectors today, roughly. All right, so that's that's pretty interesting to see. I might actually take a little bit of that long. Another massive ghost zone to 114. I'll just have to check its price distributions and see if its flow changes any, and see if there's any actual flow going into it, using live flow to see if I see anything I like. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull up Microsoft, and we're going to go ahead and grab our levels. This is an interesting one because there's not, at least on the pull, there's not a whole lot of gamma above, but we will check its levels here in a second and see what it looks like. So there's really nothing above this 335 here. There might be going into our options dashboard. So let's take a look there. So let's go ahead and scroll on down. There is some heavy call flow down here, but that is into July, and it's very in the money already. So that would be interesting to see. And then there's some more from the dailies for the 330, which is we closed around 335, I think. Interesting to see here, though, its net flow is quite positive, and on 5-day it's starting to catch a little bit of a bid moving towards the upside. So that's interesting to see to me. When we start to slim out on gamma going above, I start to think more gamma is going to need to appear, or we get a little bit overextended. That's just how I play things. If there are things above, then I still think about, should I short this? And if I do, should it be a scalp or a swing? So let's go ahead and dig in a little bit more. It is pretty darn bullish, looking towards its deltas. Not the highest win rate of all things, but it is pretty darn bullish, and it has been going up quite a bit. So interesting to see there. That doesn't go well with there's not a whole lot of gamma above, but we'll see how it goes from there. Price distro going into Monday looks like a pretty mixed day as what we're seeing across the board here. What we're seeing is a lot of chop and consolidation if we were following price distro only. I've checked about 15 tickers this weekend, and a lot of them look the same. So going into Tuesday looks about the same, kind of a mix of bull bear. Wednesday looks quite a bit stronger. Thursday looks quite a bit stronger, and Friday looks quite a bit stronger. So if I'm playing Microsoft, maybe I'm looking for Monday, Tuesday chop, and hopefully some dip on Tuesday, and then a buy the dip late Tuesday for maybe some Thursday and Friday action going towards the upside. If all of these hold the same, that could be a decent plan. All right, going into this week, these are a little bearish looking at our dealer OI, and then further out we do have some definite large dealer OI that points towards some upside. Remember, these don't always necessarily mean that this is the day or the week this plays out. They could run based on how much dealer OI is on the bull side here. I've seen that before. I think I saw it on AMD. There was just a big stack far down, but some smaller bearish stuff lining up on one side, and it still ran to that, and then I watched one of these larger ones shrink. So as I always say, pay attention to those as you go along. All right, let's check this week's gamma, see what we have here. All right, so it does look like there is some room to the upside as we go. Its largest pull currently is 322.5, which is quite a far cry from where the price is currently sitting. Biggest positive level, actually we are above currently, so a pullback to here and a repel could push it a little bit further, and this is where we kind of rested at 305 at close. That's what this one right here is saying. So there is some pull potentially all the way up to 347.5 before it gets a small repel. And make sure you check these just every other day throughout the week to make sure that nothing is completely changed, to see where it's going. But that's a pretty decent range. 330, even if it stays inside of it, 322.5 for a pull, and then maybe a push back up to 332 if it gets below that this week. All right, so that's what I'm looking for there. And then kind of looking about here, it's really kind of supported, as you see, around to that 332, 335 range, and then it starts to get less support on its GEX and VEX profile as it goes up. So interesting to see there. That kind of lines up with the gamma we're seeing, except for we are above this. I'd not be shocked to see if we have a pretty strong Monday for it to go ahead and get up to these points and then spend some of the time going down. But what I'd really like to see, so it lines up with price distribution a little bit better, and the fact that its net flow is starting to push, I'd like to see us have a rough Monday that gives us a bit of a drawdown where we pull towards these levels, and then we have a very good rest of the week that brings us up towards these. So that is what I'm watching for the week. These are the 3 tickers that I plan on spending some time trading. I don't always just pick random things. I do ask around people what they want to see, and then when I see things I like to go ahead and just put them out there for you all to see and see what the levels look like. Hope everybody has a great trading week. I will see you Wednesday for the midweek mashup, and I'll see you on Twitter and in Discord, obviously. Everybody have a safe trading week, and take care out there.